Hello everyone, today I'll be reviewing The Ten Commandments. So The Ten Commandments came out in 1956 and was directed by Cecil B. DeMille, and this film is based on a classic story of Moses, who is played by Charlton Heston in this movie. So this is one of those classic Hollywood epics that came out back in the day, and obviously the story of Moses from the Bible, obviously a very famous story, and it's been adapted many times before, and in fact there was a 1923 silent version of the story which was actually also directed by Cecil B. DeMille, but this one came out in 1956. Obviously it's in glorious Technicolor and also it has sound, and this film has that classical structure where we have the overture and then the intermission and then the exit music afterwards, and it's actually introduced by Cecil B. DeMille himself, who explains that 30 years of Moses' life was omitted from the Bible, so this section of the film, mostly during the first half, was taken from historians, whereas the rest of the story is taken from the biblical story itself. So it's a very long film, roughly 3 hours and 40 minutes long. So if you're not familiar with the story of Moses, he is an adopted Egyptian prince who later finds out his background, and he finds out he's actually a Hebrew, and he eventually decides to free the slaves. He's given a message from God in order to free the slaves, and he sets out to do this. Now, the main villain of the film, I suppose, is Ramesses, who becomes the pharaoh, and he's played by Yul Brynner. We also have many other talented actors in this film, particularly Anne Baxter, Edward G and also Vincent Price as well. So many great actors in this film, and it also has to be said, given that this is an epic, there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of extras in this film. There are some scenes where you can see so many people on the screen. It really is absolutely spectacular. And in fact, actually, when this came out, this was actually the most expensive film ever made, and you can certainly see why, because there are many grand sets, and just in terms of the way this film looks, almost every shot is absolutely stunning. Obviously, it's in Technicolor, it's very bright, it's very beautiful to look at, and there are some really stunning scenes in this film. It really is absolutely beautiful. I also have to talk about the music as well, which was composed by Elmer Bernstein. Really fantastic, really bombastic, very loud, very booming. Gets excellent introduction. It really just sets us up for this film. So this was the first time I'd ever seen it, and I knew that I would love this film, and I do. It's an amazing movie. I'm just going to say that straight away. I love this film. Some of my favourite films of all time are those classic epics, particularly ones like Ben-Hur, which also had Charlton Heston, and Lawrence of Arabia, which is obviously more of a historical epic, whereas this is a proper biblical epic. It's a classic story, and still to this day, it's such a fantastic story, particularly when it's put on screen in this way, directed excellently by Cecil B. DeMille. The special effects in this film, for its time, are incredible. I think one of the best scenes in the film is absolutely the parting of the Red Sea. This is a bit when Moses, he gets his staff out, he speaks to God, and he needs to get through, he needs to get across the sea. So we get this magnificent scene where the Red Sea is parted, and the scene was actually achieved using this big container, water being poured from either side, and then that being played in reverse, so it looks like the sea is moving out of the way. It's absolutely spectacular. It looks beautiful, and yes, although obviously now it looks a bit dated, but still for its time, it's just a spectacular scene. One of the best, in terms of special effects, one of the most magnificent scenes in all motion picture history, in my opinion, an absolute standout. What also does really help this film is the dialogue. Now, like a lot of these classic Hollywood epics, this film has a very theatrical feel to it. Certainly in terms of the way the characters speak, it feels a lot more like a stage play. A lot of the lines are delivered with great enthusiasm, very loud, spoken very clearly. You almost can't miss a line of dialogue, which is what I really like. Everything the actors say, spoken very clearly, spoken very loudly. Yes, it's a very quotable film. Some of the lines are absolutely brilliant. Obviously, there's the famous "Let my people go," which obviously Moses says quite a few times throughout this film, and it's fantastically delivered by Charlton Heston. In terms of the cinematography, again, absolutely stunning. One of the best looking films I've ever seen. I have the Blu-ray behind me and it looks absolutely stunning. And in fact, this film is actually recently been made available on a 4K disc. Unfortunately, I don't have a 4K player, but if I did, the 4K version is apparently absolutely stunning. So overall, as you can probably tell, I love this film. I love these old epics. This is a very cinematic film. It feels like a real experience watching it. Obviously, because it's 3 hours and 40 minutes long, it's not one of those films that, you know, if you're bored and you want something to watch, you just stick this on. You really need to set aside some time for this film, but it is absolutely worth it, honestly. It's a real experience. It's one of the greatest biblical epics of all time, one of the greatest epics ever made, and possibly one of my favourite films. I mean, not one of my absolute favourites, but having just watched it, I'm actually eager to watch it again at some point, even though the film is so long. It is worth saying that when adjusted for inflation, this film, The Ten Commandments, is still one of the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time. It did absolutely amazing at the box office, and in fact it was actually Cecil B. DeMille's last film, but it was his most successful film and probably his most famous film. So I'd like to think that all that experience Cecil B. DeMille had, he put into this film and made an absolute masterpiece. So what is there I don't like about this film? Well, no, nothing. There's nothing I don't like about this film. So for that reason, I'm going to give The Ten Commandments a rating of 10 out of 10. I would say definitely watch this film at least once during your life. I know it's a very long film. It's not always the easiest film to watch. But for me, the time flew by. It did feel like a long film, but for good reason. It's supposed to feel like a long film because it's an epic. So there we go. So definitely check out The Ten Commandments. So there we go, guys. So that's my review of The Ten Commandments. So have you seen it? If you have seen it, did you like it? Please let me know down in the comments section below and let me know what your thoughts are. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.